What's up, everyone? Welcome to Beyond the Piano with Siphon O. Now, I remember last time I talked about X-Men. Well, this was actually on the site, but the last time I talked about X-Men, this was with the Uncanny X-Men annual, where they brought back Cyclops, or where they explained how he came back. And I remember saying that I didn't know if I would come back or not to whatever Marvel's trying to do with the X-Men now that they've vanished. So when it came to this next issue of Uncanny X-Men, I gave it some serious thought, and then I just kind of gave in. I mean, as much as I dislike this story, I can't really ignore a good chance to get back to the Cyclops that everyone loves. This issue was sort of a heartbreaker. I mean, because this was Scott Summers' time to reintegrate into the world, kind of see everything that he missed, see everything that he lost. It was depressing to see just how wrong this world could go without the X-Men. And the problem is that while they said this was the X-Men disassembled, that wasn't the extent. This was the X-Men disassembled. This was the Xavier Institute disassembled. Every single mutant sanctuary disassembled. There was almost no place for mutants to go in this world. It's probably a conversation for another time, but this also did sting a bit because part of me was never too happy with getting into another extinction-like event, and this behind the scenes did feel like another extinction event. We just barely saw many notable faces throughout this issue. Maybe Blindfold, maybe a few other faces that you've seen before. No one too major. Aside from that, where are the mutants? Where's the mutant population? I mean, we have all these X-Men stories, but who even knows if that's all existing in the same timeline right now? Right now I want to assume that's all alternate universe things, and honestly I can't even be too bothered to look into something that doesn't have too much staying power. I know for a fact Marvel's just doing that just to have X books out there, so I'm not even too bothered in investing in something that's clearly not their end game with what's going on with Uncanny X-Men. It was pretty crazy to see this version of Scott Summers, who's just walking around trying to find the clues, figure out what happened to the X-Men. He doesn't want to believe they're dead, but everyone's telling him he's dead. Is sort of still blaming him for what happened, because you can't just come back from the dead and suddenly everything's good again. You can't expect that they're all gonna start putting their faith in him once again, jump back into the fight for mutant kind. At the same time, it was bold how far he was willing to go for these answers, because the fight that broke loose by the end of this issue was not something I was prepared for, not this soon, because what we had to look forward to through Cyclops' return was the idea that him and Wolverine would be able to work together. They didn't end on the best of terms, even though after Cyclops' death, Wolverine was still one of those who still saw him as a friend despite quote unquote losing his way. When Scott put out his last plea for help for whoever's left to come find him, I wasn't too shocked that it ended up being Wolverine. But who else also came in that moment? That was what really who came who else came with Cyclops and Wolverine when he made that final plea? That was pretty bold. No. Who else came with Cyclops? No. Who else followed Wolverine when Cyclops made that plea for help? That was one heck of a fight scene that they put together. Cyclops did say that he didn't have as much restraint as he did before, but it's one thing to say that, and it's another thing to actually see that in action. So I wasn't too shocked that even now the gloves would still come off with the people he saw as enemies. And like, I suppose the same could be said for Wolverine. There was another half of this issue. As I've said before, I'm not too happy about paying for oversized issues with Marvel. I'm only going to ever read the first half of it. The second half of it, I felt is just there just to get a quick buck off of it. Maybe it adds some context to the story, but honestly, I don't feel like they ever put the same quality of work they put into the main story. But have I changed my mind about sticking with this story? For now, I think I will see it through to the end just because, if you support a character like Cyclops, then you have to support him. I only hope that when the next issue comes, that Marvel continues to show that they are taking this seriously and that they are trying to do Cyclops justice where they have struggled before, because their bad habits of just dragging his name through the dirt was a slap in the face for everyone who has been an X-Men fan up to this point.